Speaking of conferences, Robyn, I reflect on this all the time, and you and I have talked about this on the show. We were both attending the same conference, but we could have been two ships crossing in the night and could have completely missed each other if not for a really chance encounter as you guys were eating lunch. It was the first kind of like warm day in Denver that weekend, and so everybody was outside, and you and I, with your group of friends, started a conversation. You shared some guacamole with me, and you know what? We got to talk then. We met again in Austin. I got to meet your husband, Matt, who is one of my favorite people. Got to meet his mom, Rose. I've gotten to meet your daughter. We stayed together in Las Vegas to see the amazing.
Let's clarify, we, the family, stayed together. You didn't stay with my daughter.
That's true. Let's point that out. I did not stay with your minor daughter. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, just all these like wonderful things that have come from this friendship, and thinking I would not have gotten to know Natalie, and so many awesome experiences that we've got to share just because of that one chance meeting. And I know we've heard your story before, but if you don't mind briefly, if you can remind us, why are you the person that I mention the most on this podcast when I'm having a conversation with somebody and trying to explain why it matters to know if somebody's cholesterol is ultra high, if it's necessarily good or bad for somebody in this space who's eating this certain way. Can you tell us how all of that kind of originated?
Yes, absolutely. You can't talk about Matt unless you talk about me first. So that's why I get mentioned
Sure.
so often. I told him I was coming on your show. He said, "Are you going to spend the whole hour talking about me?" And I said, "Probably." So I just want to go ahead and get that ball rolling. But my story starts with I spent years just having mental illness problems. So I was diagnosed with, you said all of this in the intro, but diagnosed first with postpartum depression. However, that depression had been there way longer, years before that. I just never admitted to it. Which then was diagnosed as depression, which then turned into bipolar disorder, OCD, high anxiety, those things. Completely aside from that, I was gaining a weight. Of course, I was heavily medicated. So a lot of these antipsychotics and antidepressants make you gain weight, but I was blissfully unaware because I was completely sedated for several years. But I had gone to the doctor just for a general checkup, and my cholesterol levels were high. So he wanted to put me on a statin, and I kind of had some knowledge about that. So I just asked them to change my diet. And I changed to, like you mentioned, NSNG, no sugars, no grain. It's Vinnie Tortorich's trademark and his thing. So I always like to give him his credit. And it did the thing. It reduced my cholesterol levels, and my doctor just said, "Yeah, keep going with it." About a year later, I was, heavily listening. I was so excited about this. I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and that's when I started hearing about Dr. Georgia Ede and how she uses low carb diets to help people with mental disorders and mental illnesses. And so I was like, hey, I've been doing this a year. I'm still sedated. I'm medicated. I just felt compelled to try to get off of these drugs. I just wanted to see if it was possible. I always had this idea in my head that I could go back if I needed to, but I wouldn't know if I didn't try. So I went off of all those medications with the assistance of a doctor. I always want to point that out. You do not want to try this alone. And I went off all the medications, and I've never been on them since. Now, the reason why you talk about me so often on the podcast, Casey, is because ironically, my cholesterol levels did all kinds of crazy things when I went super low carb and I got lean. So I do fit into the phenotype of a lean mass hyper-responder. And this is what puts me in a very tricky situation, which honestly, I didn't even ever think about until you brought it to my attention in our first one-on-one interview. But that was that I have to make a decision every single day. Do I treat my mental illness and my symptoms from my mental illness with this low carb diet, or do I add carbohydrate or even a statin to address my cholesterol levels? And so I have made this decision. It's my decision. I've made it by educating myself, and I do let my doctors know, but I've made the decision that it is more important to me to manage my mental health symptoms with my diet than it is to worry about that number. I'm hopeful that there will be science to back that decision. And I feel like we're moving in that direction, but the scientific process is a slow process. So I have to make this decision for myself. I've experimented with it. I've talked about the sweet potato experiment that I did with Dr. Tro often. I know what happens if I add the carbohydrate. What happens is within a few weeks, my depression symptoms come back, and they come back with a vengeance. So I know what happens if I add the carbohydrates back in. So I've chosen not to seek that route.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that story. And yeah, we've got the 1-year data from the Keto CTA trial that just came out, and there's a bit of controversy, and I think everything's going to be smoothed out, but there is a bit of a question on whether lean mass hyperresponder on a low carbohydrate ketogenic diet has plaque progression or not, what rate it is. We don't have a control group. So again, there's lots of questions, but it is still a question. And as careful as we've been over so many years to say, like, we don't know, we're looking at answers, like, you're right. Like, we'll figure it out eventually. Like, we'll keep going down that scientific path, but that's, days, weeks, months, years for you. Like, that's a long time. And in that time, you have to make real decisions based on the information that you have. And I'm not joking. I love every episode I've done with you. I love the episode I did with Matt. One of my favorite answers to a question I ever got was asking Matt, what do you do in this situation? You can eat however you like. This is now your wife. And you've got this problem. Like, would you be willing to recommend a dietary change to alleviate potentially the risk of heart attack or something bad happen in the cardiovascular system, but then, have that risk of bipolar depression? All that stuff comes back. And his answer was amazing, where he's like, she can do whatever she likes. It's her life, but I would not trade one single day of the Robyn I know today that gets to experience life, that is not semi-comatose on the couch, that gets to enjoy her kids and have experiences. I would not trade one day. And that, to me, that is such a beautiful answer. And I love that he answered it in that way.
Yeah, me too, because it made it a lot easier for me, because it's hard to explain it, I guess. I mean, it's not really a conscious decision anymore. Like, I'm not thinking about these lipids floating around in my veins. I'm just thinking about my health and my happiness and choosing joyful things every single day. And I support that by eating a very low carbohydrate, pretty much carnivore style diet. And like him, I wouldn't change that. I've lived that life, and I don't want to live that life again. So why would I consciously make the decision to go back? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Yes, there's controversy with the study, and I think we're going to learn more. But the whole point is we have to ask questions. And we study something and come out of the study with more questions. There's not going to be a day that we can just like stick a flag in this and say this is settled. We're always going to have to ask these questions. And then this is specific to this LMHR population. It may not apply to anybody else. It may not apply to us, but we don't know unless we study it. And the fact is, we're not studying these types of populations, and we need to. So it's still very exciting that this study exists. It's very exciting what's coming out of it. It's causing a conversation, and a conversation that needs to happen, because there's more people like me. Even though we're a small subset of people, there's still more people like me that have to make this decision. And it really doesn't matter what comes out, but it would be so great if we had some support somewhere to back us, so we're not always being labeled as non-compliant. That's just a hard label to carry around all the time.
Yeah. Sounds like that Seinfeld episode where Elaine couldn't see the doctor anymore because somebody wrote non-compliant in her folder or whatever. Yeah, that's such a good point. A really well-made point that it allows us to ask more of the deeper questions. So I appreciate that. And I would hope that, given the same situation, if I were in your situation, that I would choose to do the exact same thing. I would like to think that I would. Hard to say without being in your situation. But yeah, I think it's wonderful that you were able to find all this amazing information. I still just can't even believe some of your before and after pictures. pictures and the weight loss, but also, knowing you in person, trying to imagine that version of you that was heavily medicated is hard for me to do. So very cool. Thank you for sharing that again. Natalie, I'm a little bit less familiar with your story and how you were able to find low carbohydrate diet. So can you tell us a little bit about your health journey through your life? You're clearly very, very healthy and kicking younger people's butts in yoga all the time. Can you tell us what that journey was like for you?
Well, I've always been active. And so, all the way through my 30s, I've never had a weight problem. I wasn't a heavy child, but back then we ate different too. So there was just a point. I should mention I'm a retired flight attendant, so I've spent about 15 years being very hard on my body. And I'm sure years prior to that. But I started gaining, maybe 5-10 pounds here and there, maybe starting in my late 30s, 40s. And then when I became a flight attendant, I probably packed on another 10 or 15 pounds just because of the lifestyle, right? Like you're not sleeping, you're eating, when you're eating all these odd times, you're really just eating what's on the plane sometimes because you don't have time to think about bringing food and etc. Fast forward, I broke my ankle at one point, and boy, was I was a little round thing. I'm only 5'3", and it looked like you could probably roll me and bounce me down the sidewalk for a little while. Like I could have been a dodgeball. And so I was able to, lose a little bit of that. But what I will say is the whole time when I put on that weight, I couldn't lose, like I maybe could lose 10 pounds, maybe I'd lose 15. But the second, I drank a glass of water, 5 pounds would come back. I couldn't really get it under control. And so let's fast forward to 2 years ago, fast forward to 2 years ago, that I was really struggling because I retired as a flight attendant and now I'm working from home. And I was like, okay, now I can focus on my sleep. Now I can focus on my health. All these things. So I tried really hard. I went on a smoothie diet. I rejoined Weight Watchers. I don't even know. Oh, I did a 1,200 calorie diet for an entire year where I ate 4 ounces of chicken at night and like some dry broccoli. It was disgusting. And then I was starving. So on the weekends, I'm having popcorn and Milk Duds because I've tried so hard all week, right? Anyway, so I feel like I was trying everything. I started lifting weights and I'm like, well, at least if I'm going to be a chunky gal, I'd like to have some muscle. Maybe muscle will push the fat out. I think we're told that, and it didn't happen. I gained like 12 pounds in 2 months. And I'm like, what the hell? So I was just defeated. So I listened to a podcast one day. I'm not a podcast listener at this point. I think they're boring, but I found one with Mike Rowe, and Vinnie Tortorich happened to be the guest speaker that day. And I was super miffed because there was a guest on Mike Rowe, and I really wanted to listen to the way I heard it. Him telling a story and then finding out it was the guy who discovered germs, or something, but it wasn't that anymore. So that day I listened to the podcast and I literally felt like he was looking at the screen and talking to me. And I was like, this is it. This is what I need to do. So that's how I was introduced to No Sugar, No Grains through Vinnie Tortorich. I dove into everything. I ordered his book. I got his PDF. I got all the things. And then it took me a while to really start following it strictly. I played around, I'm like, oh, we're going to order pizza tonight, but I'll just order the keto style, so I think I tried to do what a lot of people do is, but I'm eating keto. It says that I'm eating keto. And then one day, or I should say a couple days, I went to go visit my grandbabies in Las Vegas. And I'm like, I'm just going to eat the way we normally eat because I don't want to ruin our little, vacation together. And I came back from that 4-day trip so constipated. Sorry, folks, but that's just the way it is. I was very uncomfortable to the point where I thought, I think I might have to go to the doctor to help, like, do something about this. Like it was just awful. So I was like, that's it. Okay, large lady, we've had enough of this. From that day forward, the day I got home, I was like, that enough is enough. And I dove in and I've never looked back. And within 4 days, I've struggled from, I don't know if it's IBS. I don't know if it's IBD. I don't know what it is, but intestinal issues my entire life. I can remember at 4 years old having this problem. I've always had like itchy skin. We could go on and on about the things that have bothered me my entire life. And within 4 days of strictly taking and getting rid of grains and sugar and processed food, and only eating cruciferous vegetables, above ground vegetables, I literally could tell that my stomach wasn't bloated. The joint pain in my thumbs that I was told was, something I'll have to deal with for the rest of my life because of my age, was subsiding. And so after those 4 days, I was like, that's it. I didn't even know half of these things could happen. I really came here for weight loss. So, and then it just continued. The longer I've done this, this has changed, that's changed. And I've just dove in wherever I can feel like I'm part of the community is where I have, I've tried to sink my teeth into. So now I'm a very avid podcast listener. And look at me, I'm on a podcast. What?
So Natalie, which episode? Because Vinny's been on Micro twice. Were you original Roby or Roby 2.0?
Yeah, I'm a 2.0 because it was Where's the Beef, which is why
Where's the Beef is the first one. The second one is like drinking scotch and something like that. So you're an original Roby.
What? OG.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so it was and that's why I chose it, because I'm all, Where's the Beef? Oh, that's a cute title. So I had no idea. I literally went in blind. But I had been praying, I've been asking for help, like, oh my God, what do I do? Right. And so sometimes it just takes that person to tell you something that probably everybody's told you at certain points. But that day, my ears were open, my mind was clear, and I was ready to hear it. So, and I couldn't be more thankful.